Welcome back. You're still on the Policies Week in Review, reaching live from the nation's capital, Abuja. And joining us now is Dr. Mefor, media consultant, and of course, not a new face on the Polity. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm good, Mercy.
I can see that you're
as good as I can be.
That's great. Of course, today we'll be talking about rule of law, the respect for rule of law in Nigeria. Of course, this issue cannot be overflogged, as we've spoken about it this morning on the press. We'll start with Osun State governor, who of course suspended the Chief Justice of Osun State, and then we'll head to Zamfara State. And now, just about a few minutes ago, the Court of Appeal sitting in Abuja sacked Governor Kabir Yusuf of Kano State. I'd like to get all of this together in one and just, let's say, fuse it together in the rule of law, but then we cannot possibly merge everything together, because in Osun State, we have where they've sacked the Chief Justice, even after the court has ruled that the governor cannot do anything about the Chief Justice, but then he still went ahead and of course suspended the Chief Justice. But then in Zamfara, they said they've declared the election inconclusive, and then the election has to happen in 3 other local governments. But for Kano, the court upheld the verdicts of the tribunal led by Justice Oluyemi Akita. Dr. Law, I'd like you to analyze all of these 3, if possible.
These are not ordinary times at all. The political situation in Nigeria is not smiling, and all well-meaning citizens should be reviewing the happenings with a view to understanding their implications for the future. I am of the view that judiciary is on trial. You know, the credibility of the judiciary, for me, is suffering, and they need to do a lot more to clean up their image, redeem it, and then reassure the common man. This cliche that judiciary is the last hope of the common man, you know, is beginning to change to judiciary being the lost hope of the common man.
Looks like you peeped into the book of this morning.
You know, so we need to do something to pull the judiciary back from the precipice. And the fact remains that only the judiciary can save itself. In that light, if you take on what has happened, you know, shown in Zamfara and in Kano, you will see some pieces of evidence, some rays of hope that suggest that all hope is not lost in the judiciary itself. When Justice Ngozi Azige was presiding over the affairs of the judiciary in Kano, she alerted the nation that the members of our tribunal were being chased around with Ghana must go loaded with money and all that. And for that reason, they had to deliver their judgment on Zoom for security reasons. And the Court of Appeal, upholding their own verdict, shows that the judgment they gave on the Kano governorship election was indeed sound. You know, then you come to that of Zamfara. I think it's in the same vein. You know, there are certain things that are happening in the polity, you know, that are so unbecoming, very untoward, very unfortunate. An example is the express provision, or rather provisions of the Electoral Act that stated that where the margin of victory, where the margin of victory is smaller than the value of votes in the areas where elections didn't hold or were cancelled, that you do a rerun in order to give those people who are in the areas where elections either didn't hold or elections were cancelled the opportunity to exercise their franchise. The assumption of the Electoral Act provision in this regard is that you know, the people who didn't vote could actually vote for a particular candidate, and that would, you know, upturn the victory. So even the person who has won, no matter the margin with which the person is winning, hypothetically it can be upturned if the rest of the people decide to vote for a second or third candidate. So that is the presumption of that extant provision. Even if this is not tenable or plausible, the issue of democracy being the rule of majority also presupposes that those who didn't vote should have the opportunity to vote. They should be able to exercise their franchise. That is what it ought to be. That wasn't what the tribunal in Zamfara did with their ruling, because they simply ignored the difference between the margin of win and the value of votes in the three mentioned local government areas. The appellate court, the court of appeal that ruled on the matter, now brought that in. Bringing it in now means that you have to go and give those people the opportunity to vote. This is very fundamental. I cherish that judgment. That is what they ought to be. If you bring it into what happened to Kogi in the just concluded election, INEC went on ahead and declared, right? They declared. You remember that initially INEC said that there was going to be a rerun in some areas, but they went on ahead. I haven't quite been able to compute. I've not been able to compute the values to know why INEC went back on its own word. The same thing also happened in Bayelsa, and the value of votes in the areas discountenanced by INEC by way of cancellation is more than the margin of win by Diri. That was declared the winner. So what happened in the Zamfara ruling is having the same telling effect on the action of INEC in Bayelsa. You know, Diri could still maintain the lead by more than 65,000, you know, at the moment. You know, he could, but it doesn't mean anything. Do what the law has said. Do you understand the point? So, if you look at it holistically, especially from this perspective, you will see that the judgment of courts of appeal in Zamfara, in Kano, is a plus. A plus of democracy. It's redemptive in itself. It's actually salvific, because it's beginning to show that indeed the judiciary is working to recover its own image. However, what has happened in Osun, where the governor decided to suspend the Chief Justice of the state against a subsisting court order, it's executive recklessness, and I'm surprised that Senator Delike will do that.
But then he's hiding under the guise of the fact that the Osun State House of Assembly has pushed that forward under the guise that the Chief Justice that was suspended, the gross misconduct, and then some electioneering malpractices and all of that. But then the question is, even with all of this, given that the court already ruled that, oh, do not touch this person,
you know, so
do you think the governor should have so much power? The government certainly doesn't have such power. You see, as long as a court of competent jurisdiction has issued a valid order, you have to vacate that order before you can do anything. That is the way it is. But obviously, he went on ahead to suspend the Chief Justice of the state. I can't remember her name now, is a lady. Bella, I think.
Against a subsisting court order. That for me is executive recklessness. The quintessence of the principle of a separation of powers advanced by political philosophers like Montesquieu and others is to the effect that in a presidential democracy you have to separate power into three: executive, legislature, and the judiciary manned by different person or persons.
Okay.
But here we are, the judiciary has taken a decision on the matter, say in the interim, you know, an order is not a judgment. You know, the court never said you will never do that. There is an order, there is an argument before his or her lordship saying that there is a reason why this can be done immediately. You go to the court and argue against it, so that the order will be vacated to give you the leeway, the power to exercise, give you the chance to exercise your power to suspend. Going on ahead to suspend in the face of a subsisting and prevailing valid court order is executive lawlessness. You know, it's a direct affront, you know, on the judiciary itself, because when you can't obey court order, once government cannot obey court order, before you know it, individuals, organizations will also begin to...
I like the fact that you mentioned that, because I was going to move us from Osun State to Plateau State. But now that you've mentioned about individuals not respecting the rule of law, it brings me to NLC versus the federal government. There was a strike, a 3-day strike this week, that's Monday to Wednesday, where the NLC said they are protesting the beating of the Joe Ajaero, that's the NLC president, and some persons have said it wasn't the right time, other persons said when will be the right time. Meanwhile, we have another faction that said, oh, there was a court injunction that actually stopped them from going on strike. But then something familiar that caught my attention about this was NLC saying, have we not seen times where courts actually give verdicts and then politicians do not go ahead with the court injunctions, but then when it now comes to NLC, now they are calling off, and then NLC went further and said they've not seen any court injunction stopping them from going on this strike. When they see one, they would revert it back to their lawyers and then they'll take it up from there, which begs the question, now that the politicians have set a precedent, or an antecedent rather, about how they want the rule of law to be, don't you think other persons would follow suit? And then when there is no rule of law, no respect for rule of law in the country, what then happens?
Yes, I listened to the president of the TUC make that claim. He even went further on a national TV station to claim that government itself does not obey court order. You know, when he said that, I was taken aback, because he was indirectly, if not directly, saying that insofar as government does not obey court order, that the same government shouldn't expect them to obey court order, even though he further said or stated that they were yet to be served. Which of course is curious. If there is a subsisting court order, it will not amount to anything until the other party has been served. Even when it is ex parte. An ex parte order is the order you give in the absence of the second party because of the emergency nature of it. You know, so I wouldn't know the kind of court order, you know, that was trying to stop the NLC from going on strike. Or whichever, whether it is ex parte order or any order, you know, whether it is an interlocutory injunction, even perpetual injunction, because in this country we have also seen a case of perpetual injunction issued in favor of His Excellency Peter Odile, that he must never be questioned or tried. A very strange one, but we got it in this country. But what all that, you know, cumulatively, you know, translate to is simple. It means that judiciary itself is beginning to lose value, you know, both in essence and in the way it is taken by the ordinary person. Okay,
sorry to bother in. Do you think this is the fault of the judiciary or the politicians themselves?
It's partly the fault of the judiciary. You see, the politicians, I have often said it, even on your platforms here, I've often said that the politicians the world over, it's not a Nigerian thing, will always want power. They will go for power at all costs. They will do whatever they want to get to power. So, since that is the tendency of the average politician you find within our shores and outside our shores, you have to blame the institutions themselves that have allowed them to get away with that which they do. If you have judiciary intact and in place, it is its duty to enforce its own order. Do you understand what I'm saying? But you ask yourself, of what value is an order that is unenforceable? Do you understand what I'm saying? Because we've seen orders as, even judgments. I've seen judgments against the police, against the presidency, against EFCC. These are orders and judgments that have not been enforced by the judiciary itself. Because when an order is given and the order is not carried out, is disobeyed, you have to make it consequential by returning to that order for enforcement, by returning to that issuing court for enforcement. That is the normal thing. That is what you should obtain. So you don't go on and take the laws into your own hands. As you are doing so, you are actually escalating conflict. You are widening the latitude for confusion and conflict, and you are opening the space for what we call self-help. And once you get to the point where the people can no longer respect or believe in the judiciary, all that will be left is self-help. Because the judiciary that is supposed to be there to intervene as what you may call as what you may call the common superior, coming between the parties, standing between them and saying, you do this, the other you do that. That is the job of the judiciary. But where you see that the judiciary is only existing in name, people will no longer want to go to it because they know they will not get the reprieve that they would pay before such a court. So if this is where we are at the moment, or tending towards, you can now begin to see how dire the consequences of how the judiciary has come to be would be ultimately. You see, I keep saying it, in politics, in public life, perception is far more important than reality. That is why we keep saying that justice must not only be served, but it must seem, it must appear to have been served. What I mean is that you can give a judgment that is bereft of justice in the thinking of the people. You have given a judgment, but you haven't actually delivered justice. Let me give you an example. The presidential election petitions sought to know who won the 2023 presidential election. The Court of Appeal, the Court of Appeal that constituted the 7th the presidential election petition court, did not tell Nigerians who won. They simply said they upheld the position of INEC because the petitioners were not able to provide evidence to prove anything to the contrary. But they did not tell us that Tinubu won. And the Supreme Court affirmed the position of the presidential election petition court. So what that means by implication is that till today, nobody can swear that Tinubu won or didn't win. Even so, you delivered judgment. Justice, there is no justice. The judgment is bereft of justice because the reason people were petitioning is to know where they said, Atiku said, I won. Tinubu said, I won. Peter Obi said, I won. Right? The court was supposed to tell Nigerians who won
the election.
Yes, they didn't. They did not tell Nigerians who won. So you see where the problem is. And so they now based on technicalities and said, well, since you can't prove that you won, Tinubu is the president as far as that is the position of INEC.
But remember that the Chief Justice said these things are not based on emotions, but on technicalities. And then they still use the Constitution for all of this.
I know. That is technicalities. For example, when a case has to be filed within 180 days and you didn't file it within 180 days, it does not mean that your claim is wrong.
But then if the 180 days at elapsed,
yes,
so it can't be a legal tender.
It becomes a problem. So that doesn't mean, for example, let me give you an example. If a saver of Bayelsa had won this election, remember that there is a case of I think there is this amendment. There's this amendment that was signed into law by Muhammad Buhari, president. He was then. He signed into law that whoever is sworn in twice cannot be sworn in the third time. And Silva has already been sworn in twice. You know, would he even be contesting? That's the first question. That's the question now. Somebody went to court on this. The person, there is a judgment in favor of Silva. The judgment in favor of Silva was based on the fact that the person that went to court was not qualified to come to court. You see where the technicality comes down. You know, so it doesn't mean that Silva should contest or should not contest. Do you see the problem? So even if Silva had won, that question was there to be resolved. That, you know, that he was not supposed to contest. Somebody still would go to court because they wanted, so the court wanted an individual that participated in the primaries or that is a member of that political party to be the one to challenge the validity of the nomination of Silva. That is just what you see how technicality plays. So even though Silva was allowed to contest, the court still did not tell us whether Silva was qualified or not. That is technicality. Do you understand that? So once you begin to build the laws, you know, build laws around technicalities, you are removing justice. You are removing justice from the process. So you can now say that there can be judgment without justice. That's the point I'm making. The judgment without justice. So how do you move forward from that kind of legal system? Nigerian judiciary is on trial. Nigerian judiciary is hiding behind the facade of technicalities to run away, abdicate from its primary responsibilities. The Supreme Court, for example, is a policy court. All those matters that were brought before it ought to be interpreted and directions given. Do you understand what I'm saying? That is why Supreme Court. That's why Supreme Court is a policy court. In fact, it is said that a law is what the judges say the law is. So all those issues, gamut of issues that were brought before the Supreme Court via the appeal that emanated from the Presidential Election Petition Court, you know, what can you say you took away? Do you understand what I'm saying? What can you say you took away? Except in the case of 25% in FCT. They didn't resolve the other issues. They didn't. I had expected them to resolve, make clear statements on certain issues. For example, when you say that the issue of forgery before you was not pleaded in the earlier court, what then should become the consequence? Do you understand what I'm saying? Because as we speak now, we don't know whether that amounted to anything in the first place, if assuming it was pleaded. Do you understand what I'm saying? However, to be fair again to the Supreme Court, the court is only Father Christmas. You will get from the court what you took to it. Yes. If you don't plead, if you don't plead, you don't get. Even where you ought to get, you could get, but you didn't plead, the court procedurally is not bound to give you that which you did not plead.
Okay, that was a powerful one.
Thank you.
The court will not provide for you what you did not plead. Yes. Let's go to other matters on the polity, and that's speaking about what's going on as regards insecurity. There was a lot going on with national dailies this morning as regards insecurity. First, the Senate summons service chiefs that demanded the security rejig, and then in another paper for still on insecurity, the House of Rep members invited the service chiefs, but instead they sent their representatives, and the House of Reps insisted that the service chiefs must appear, and then they sent their representatives away, and that's one. Two, coming from Ibadu, in all of the papers this morning, the one that particularly caught my attention was Nigerian Tribune and The Punch, which I'm going to quote what they said. Insecurity, we inherited tough period, says Ribadu at editors conference. That's one way. Second one, he said, that's on The Punch, he said, be patient. Inherited crisis won't disappear overnight. Let's note that the president already said that we should endure. Now they are coming to say they've inherited crisis overnight and it will not disappear. He said he has appealed to Nigerians that Tinubu inherited poor economy, insecurity, then exposed deficit inherited from Buhari be transparent. Obi challenges. That's the part that caught my attention, because Obi already said he was going to be an opposition. Yeah. Then he said if it was that bad, declare the assets that Buhari left in the office before he of course handed over to you guys. But in all of this, do you actually think something would actually work out in all of this insecurity back and forth between House of Rep members and the senators? And then why would the service chiefs send representatives to answer questions that are actually very, very serious on the polity? I mean, security and security is a big deal.
For me, the House of Reps is wrong for even entertaining answers from the subordinates of the service chiefs. Yes. You drive them away. Simple. Do you understand what I'm saying? You sit them down, introduce yourself, and you introduce yourself. You're not the chief of army staff, you're not the chief of naval staff, you're not the chief of defense staff. You drive them away. It's simple. But you go ahead and entertain answers from those people only to turn around to protest. You are devaluing your office. This is a presidential democracy. In a presidential democracy, in a democracy, as a matter of fact, the military institution and the police, the military must subordinate itself to the civilian authorities. And the highest body of representatives of the Nigerian masses is the National Assembly. 109 senators and 360 House of Reps members. That is the entirety of Nigerian population seated there. Based on the principle of democracy, it is all of us, the 220 million of us, that should be sitting there. But the practicality, you can see, it's not possible. We can't all sit there. That is why we now, by way of election, send one of us per senatorial district, per what you may call a federal constituency. Yes. You know, that is the principle. That is what democracy is about, representation. You see, you have three major reasons or responsibilities of the National Assembly. One is representation, the other is lawmaking, and the third is what you call oversight. Oversight functions mean that it is the duty assigned to the National Assembly to ensure that the executive arm of government carries out execution of the Appropriation Act according to the law and runs the country in accordance with the Constitution, directive principles of state policy, everything. It is the job of the National Assembly. That is their number 3 assignment. That is why they summoned the service chiefs, because they want to know what is going on as far as security is concerned. And they sent their representatives. It is, in fact, there cannot be a better way of telling the National Assembly waka than that. And it's unfortunate. Then the Senate is also issuing the same summon. They want to know, they are talking about rejigging the security.
The security.
Well, you see, I am an apostle of a decentralized policing system. I have often said it, that Nigeria police cannot be effective. Insecurity in Nigeria cannot be effectively addressed from a centralized policing system. You can do a bit of research. Google can help you. You will find that you have 26 countries of the world that practice presidential system of government. And of all these 26, only Nigeria is running a single policing system, a centralized policing system. The question is why? Others are, in fact, a place like the US, which is a major presidentialism you can find anywhere in the world, is running up to 5, 6, 7 layers of policing. And in Nigeria, you are running only one. Even the vigilante services you have in Nigeria, the law has not been amended to allow them to be properly trained, properly armed, to be brought under the state government, so that they are not funded.
We have, are they even properly?
That's the problem. You are running a centralized police system, and you have less than 500,000 police officers and men in Nigeria. A little bit, a little over 400,000, right? To police, 812 wards, 774 local governments. Do you understand that? In terms of, for you to know the enormity of the work, right? Think in terms of what we call polling units that INEC talks about. And a polling unit is a cluster of polling booths. Do you understand what I'm saying? A cluster of polling booths. And you have 176,606 of them. So you can see the inadequacy of Nigeria police even in terms of number. Do you understand that? So the day you are holding a national election, you will not be able to post more than 3 policemen to a polling unit. So how do you expect 3 policemen to ensure, security of life and property in a place like that? That is why they will go there and look, whatever you're doing, they are looking at you. Because they are not in a position to do anything. The people will overwhelm them. So in terms of number, in terms of motivation, in terms of training, in terms of everything else, Nigeria policing system is grossly inadequate. There is no way it can work. And until you get the police right, you can't address insecurity. Because security is local. Whatever is happening in a place like the Northeast, Maiduguri, for example, is different. Psychologically and security-wise, in what is happening in Osun is different. What that means is that if you have a central police strategy, it will not be able to address the entirety of the country, for the simple reason that the local content required to be brought into the mix is clearly missing. You don't have it. You have one IGP, Inspector General of Police. He is coming from a section of the country. He is familiar with the life and culture of the area of the country that has produced him. If he is an Hausa man, for example, Hausa Fulani man, he may not be able to understand the nature of insecurity in Yoruba land. These are issues. And then you go to the state commands. The entire southeast states, 5 of them, the entire police commissioners, none of them is an Igbo man. Not one. And you expect this insecurity to disappear? How? You cannot wish insecurity away. You need to get to the roots. You need to uproot it. You need to be able to control. So you need to understand, the consecutive factors. What are those factors? Like I said, what is breeding insecurity in Igbo land, Yoruba land, is certainly different from what is breeding insecurity in the north. In the north. Do you understand that? And until you understand that psychology, you will not be able to address insecurity in those areas. And yet, you have a single man with only 400,000 men, being told to address insecurity in a country as vast as Nigeria, made up of well over 250 ethnic nationalities. Do you see where the problem is? Ethnic nationalities. When we say ethnic nationalities, these are distinct nationalities in terms of language, in terms of culture, in terms of the distinct people. Do you understand that? And we keep pretending that the ethnic nationalities don't matter, but they are showing us that they matter. They are proving that they matter, and that is why the inadequacy of the police is now, creating a wider latitude for confusion, for conflict. People are now resorting to self-help. When you see the escalation of what we call ungoverned spaces, it's escalating ungoverned spaces. When you say an ungoverned space, it means where government influence is not felt, where government cannot exercise authority and control. It's growing in Nigeria all across the country. There is no state that is spared. And that is why you see Nigerian military getting deeply involved in what we call internal security operations, which is essentially a police matter. In as many as 33 states in this country, the military are on the road. They are on the road on internal security. The job of the Nigerian police. Why? Because the police cannot cope. Now, is it that the police cannot cope, or the security level has been breached? It's part of it. That's not being able to cope. Okay. It's been breached. It's going to the point where the police can no longer handle what is going on. And I've given you the reasons why they can't. Their number is inadequate. They are not properly paid. They are not properly trained. So all these things are inadequate. In talking about being properly trained or being paid, one of the papers this morning equally has it that they've considered 65 years as a police retirement age. Still speaking about being fit and agile as a policeman. We're speaking about being trained, because I'm wondering the level of training a 65-year-old person would go for. Times are changing. Okay. Forms of policing are also changing. That's correct. There is what you call democratic policing. What that means is policing in a democracy is different from policing in a military administration. This has not been addressed. Okay. And you can address it only through training. You need to retrain them so that the orientation will change. Nigerian police is too militarized. The Nigerian police is #1 social asset of the ordinary man, and number two is the court. Do you understand that? Yes. Number 2 is the court. But can you, in all honesty, say the Nigerian police is a friend of anybody? They have not been retrained to understand that the reason they are there is essentially because of the ordinary man. They are the ones that should, serve as a buffer between the ordinary man and government. But you see the police taking side with the politicians, with the rich, with the government. These are people and institutions who will be wielding the coercive instruments. Where does that leave the ordinary man? You see why I said you need to retrain them. But that is not the solution even. Okay. His Excellency Senator Godswill Akpabio, the President of the Nigerian Senate, has one job to do. he needs to set up a technical committee in the Senate to work on the possibility of implementing what we call state police and community police. That is the solution.
Okay.
People say that they are, that the police, the way things are, the state police will be abused. Is the centralized police system we run at the moment not being abused? It's been abused, appropriated by the politicians, by the governors, and all that, and they use the police as an oppressive instrument to deal with the masses. It's a tragedy. So you need to retrain them. You need to break that centralization of the Nigeria police.
It's not just about training, because I remember, I think a few months ago, before Baba handed over to Egbetokun, where he visited a particular police lodge in one state in Nigeria, and it was nothing to write home about.
Yeah.
And which begs the question: is it just the reform? Is it just the training, or even has to do with from the top? Because now I'm sure money would have been appropriated to all of these constructions and all of this. And then how do you train people? It's not just about training physically. Of course, mentally, these people equally have to be fit. So where do we even start from in training these people?
It's a complex situation, very complex. Nigerian police, like I talked about, the democratic policing, which I defined as policing in a democracy, which is different from policing in other settings like military system and all that. Where to start? Apart from working on decentralizing Nigeria police force, what are the structures that must be put in place to enable us implement state police and community police? They need to really change the name. You start from the name. That word force, for God's sake. I was asked, a senior police officer. I said, why are you insisting on the word force? Nigeria police force. Tell me, why can't you go by the name Nigeria police?
Maybe the first gives them the feeling of...
But that is what it is. As a psychologist, I will tell you for free that there is something in a name. But do you know the reason why they are clinging on to the word force? Because they want to be seen as part of the armed forces.
Armed forces. Oh.
That is just a simple reason. They believe that removing the word force will civilize them to the point that they will become ordinary, like you and I. Can you imagine that kind of mentality? But that is where we are. You need to remove the word force from their name. They don't need it. Nigeria police. That's it. That is the first step that must be taken. You remove that name. There is something in the name. When you believe that you are a force, part of the armed forces, you see yourself mimicking what the soldiers do. The soldiers, their orientation, their job specifications and job characteristics make them different from what the police ought to be doing. The police is a civil organization. It's an organization that is there for the people, for maintenance of law and order. It's not, the police is not there as a force. It doesn't need to be one. Do you know the police? The police is a mediator. The soldier is not. You expect the soldier to come and start settling the problem you have with your wife? But the police is expected to do that. It's not every matter the police would encourage should go to court. He is the first judge.
And that's not the job of a force.
No, it's not the job of a force.
Makes sense.
The police is a mediator. Police is in a position to encourage what we call alternative dispute resolution.
Yeah.
It's not every matter that you go to court. The police can end a lot there, mediating. Pleading with even husband and wives. Look, you can go home. Let's talk, do this, let's talk again next week. Do you understand that? But you are there, all you want to do, you collect money for bail. Meanwhile, behind you there, they say, bail is free. Then you collect money for bail. The next thing you are charging to court, or it stands from even unlawfully detaining you. So you can't detain for more than 24 hours. So you as a journalist, you can move around this Abuja. Go to the police detention places and see people who have been there for weeks and months. These are issues. You know, we are running a system that doesn't have what we call a human face. That is why I keep saying that this is not a democracy. This is a civil rule. What happens in our democracy cannot happen in a normal democracy anywhere in the world. Do you know? Look at our prison service. Let me quickly bring that back in. 70% of the people in the Nigerian prisons are waiting trial.
Actually, 80%. We had the guest last year.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
But now, let me tell you, let me shock you further. Out of that 80%, right? More than 50% of the 80% you are talking about have already stayed in prison longer than the offenses for which they are charged.
That's correct.
I hope you understand what this means. That means you were arrested, you're charged to court, you are put on a waiting trial because they keep adjourning your case and so on and so forth. And it keeps going on and on to the point that if you were to be convicted, the maximum sentence is 5 years, but you have been there for 10. Who will pay for the balance of 5 years that you have overstayed? Nobody. And nobody is addressing this. What stops Akpabio and his men from making a law that will address this? Once you do this, there will be the contesting of Nigeria prison by more than 50%, because you start from that.
But do you even actually think making the law would actually fix things? Given the
it will not. It will
not respect law in Nigeria.
You see, we the country Nigeria. There is one old Yoruba politician of the First Republic. You understand what I'm saying? He used this expression, you know, Messi. What that means is peculiar mess. Nigeria has become a peculiar mess. It has become a place where anything goes. You see, basic things as basic as fundamental human rights. Nigerians are treated like animals. In fact, you go to the detention camps, you go to even a place as highbrow as Kuje prison. Take a trip to Kuje prison. It's not habitable. You see people living in subhuman conditions. Go to Suleja prison. It's only an hour from here. Go to Suleja prison and tell the world that you are a journalist and you want to take a look at the facilities. You will not be able to eat if you return. But human beings have been there for years, decades. Fellow human beings. And what is more, a significant percent of the people you find in the Nigerian prisons are there based on what a research we call type 2 error. Type 2 error is the error, it's type 1 error. The error of convicting an innocent person as guilty. Do you understand that? So in social science research, a hypothesis that we're supposed to reject, when we accept it, it becomes a type 1 error. So you as a judge, you have convicted an innocent person who is now languishing in jail. Some of them have been convicted of things as serious as murder, rape. Do you see where the problem is? Armed robbery. Do you know what the police, the police, something will happen here, police will come and arrest everybody. And you can't bail yourself, you can't prove your innocence, you are hounded into detention and from there to jail, from there to prison, not to court, from court, of course, there will be a withholding charge. They just dump you there and forget you there, and because it is a criminal offense, right, the judge cannot discharge you. It will take the intervention of what we call prerogative of mercy of either the governor or the judge, which is sparingly offered. You know, out of the thousands in the prisons there, you may end up releasing maybe a dozen in one whole year. What happens to the balance of other thousands that are languishing in those jails innocently?
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Dr. Law. You even took us far beyond what we wanted to talk about. But I like the fact that you mentioned the Nigerian prison. I would like to have you and one of our lawyers, human rights activists for the Nigerian prison, in one of our programs on the POLITY to analyze this further. But for today, you did perfect justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The pleasure is always mine.
Okay, all right. Thank you, our viewers at home, for staying tuned with us today on the POLITY. And of course, over the week, I remain Mercy Babajide. This is where we draw the curtain for now. See you same time, same station next week. Bye.